Go inside the Crimson Tide with your hosts Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, keeping you informed on everything Alabama. Tider Insider TV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports.
All right, here we go. It's Tuesday night in Tuscaloosa, and you know what that means. Tider Insider TV, as mentioned, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. I tell you, Don Staley and his crew, they do a great job promoting sports and tourism in West Alabama. Alongside Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com, I'm WVUA 23 Sports Director Gary Harris, and we are now just 4 days away from Alabama's annual A-Day game, which will take place on Saturday afternoon inside Bryant-Denny Stadium. And this past Saturday, Rodney, the Crimson Tide held its second scrimmage of the spring. Now, a lot of stuff to take in, quite frankly. We weren't allowed to view it as media members, but we've talked to people who were there and looked at some stats that people kept. The defense overall had a huge day. Chris Braswell, 5 sacks. Christian Story, a couple of interceptions. The defense got after the quarterbacks, but there were plays by the offense. How about Bryce Young to Georgia wide receiver transfer Jermaine Burton for a 98-yard touchdown strike? One of the big questions for Alabama all offseason has been the offensive line. They are shorthanded this spring. There's no doubt about it. On Saturday, the first offensive line was Kendall Randolph at left tackle, Javion Cohen at left guard, Seth McLaughlin at center, Damian George at right guard, and J.C. Latham at the other tackle spot. Now, earlier today, Bryce Young spoke to the media about Saturday's scrimmage and what the team can do to improve before they take the field in front of the fans this Saturday afternoon.
We didn't have our sharpest scrimmage this past weekend, and you're always going to come into obstacles. So I think we know that, but at the same time, we can't be complacent. We can't be, okay with any shortcomings that we had. I'm excited for A-Day, super excited this weekend again, another chance to compete.
All right, let me bring the hot rod in, and again, I said it at the top, a busy scrimmage. There were a lot of things happening. Let's start, though, with the defense before we get to the offensive line, and that's a factor. The offensive line shorthanded. We already know about Will Anderson and Dallas Turner, but, boy, Chris Braswell, 5 sacks, push up the middle. That defensive front five really had its way a lot of the day with the offensive line.
They did, and let's be honest. We've talked about the offensive line being a little shorthanded. Obviously, they only have like 10 or 11 guys that they're trying to rotate around, and they're having to move guys different positions. There's probably, in that first offensive line, there's probably 2 spots that you mentioned, Gary, that the guys, they're not starters. So it's going to look a lot different come August. So advantage to the defense there, but, yeah, the defense really, we talked about it we several times, about the returning starters, the returning experience on that defensive side, that defensive front, the outside pass rush. One thing they're doing a little bit differently, Gary, they're experimenting with some things, getting Dallas Turner, Will Anderson, Chris Braswell on the field together. So I think that's going to be a really difficult thing in terms of anyone to try to block that group. So, yeah, defensively looked really good. A lot of young players made plays. Christian Story, Deontay Lawson at linebacker. Story in the secondary, of course, had 2 interceptions. Could have had a third one.
Yeah.
So you're starting to see a lot of these players emerge and develop.
As far as that offensive line is concerned, Darian Dalcourt, the center, Emil Ekiyor, the guard, both sitting out spring with injuries. We'll get to Tyler Steen in a moment, but the Vanderbilt graduate transfer tackle committed to Alabama today, so he'll be here in the fall too. As you alluded to, the competition will go through the spring and into the fall, but this offensive line that starts that first game against Utah State could look a lot different than the ones we're seeing in the spring.
Very possibly, because you've got Emil Ekiyor out at right guard. He's a starter. Darian Dalcourt, Seth McLaughlin would be competing for that starting center spot, but Dalcourt's out. Of course, the left tackle spot, Kendall Randolph was with the ones. You mentioned that. The last scrimmage, they ran some other guys with the ones out there at that spot at left tackle, Mari Kite being one of them. Javion Cohen's probably gotten some reps at left tackle as well. So they've really got to get that settled, and Steen will be a really great addition, Gary, to that offensive line.
All right, they practiced this afternoon. They'll practice again on Thursday. Then the final practice will be the A-Day game on Saturday. Again, we have not got to view any practice. The media is not allowed at practice this spring at all, but you have worked hard talking to your sources, gathering information. I think Coach Saban, to me, has seemed upbeat this spring. What's been your takeaways from the spring so far overall?
Yeah, I think so. I think he's been really positive. That's really kind of what everyone, we've spoken with has picked up on, the vibes. But, Gary, when you look at it, we've talked about the leadership on this team. You've got Bryce Young on the offensive side. You've got all those defensive players, that leadership that they've brought back. I think it's been a really positive spring. Again, when I look at it, I'm looking on the offensive side. I'm saying they've got to get this offensive line, the offensive tackle short shored up. I think the interior, obviously, coming back from last year is going to be really good. Then they've got to develop some guys to go with Jermaine Burton at that wide receiver spot, with Ja'Cory Brooks being out. A lot of young talent, a lot of young players there. So they do those things. I think this offense has a chance to be really explosive. And again, we've talked about how good the defense looks.
All right, now to Tyler Steen, and I think it took a little bit longer than we expected for him to announce his decision. We felt like it was going to be Alabama all the way. This morning, he let the cat out of the bag on social media, announcing that he'll be joining the Crimson Tide. All right, listen, again, I want to say this. This is not a reflection on Alabama's young tackles at all. They've got to be developed. This is a guy that came out of St. Thomas Aquinas High School, that powerhouse in South Florida a few years ago. He was overlooked by a lot of schools because he was 265 pounds. Vanderbilt took him. Give Vanderbilt credit. They've developed this guy. He's now a 6'5", 315-pound monster with 30-plus starts in the SEC. If you get a chance to add a guy of this quality after you lost both of your starting tackles, Evan Neal, who's going to be a top 5 pick in the draft, and a 6-year player in Chris Owens, you've got to take Tyler Steen and give him an opportunity to step in here and make an impact for you.
You certainly do. I mean, he's a guy that had 12 games experience last year. Gary started every game at left tackle for Vanderbilt. That's where Alabama really needs some help. He's a guy that, just like last year when they got Toa Toa and Jamison Williams in here, guys with some experience on this level with a lot of talent, same thing. He's got talent. He's got experience. That's what you cannot replace. He's played in the SEC, played in the East. He's played against Georgia for 3 years. I mean, he knows what it's like to face that competition. So I think to be able to bring in a guy with that kind of experience is really big.
And had a good game against Georgia last season, I might add, going up against those huge defensive linemen for the Bulldogs. All right, now it's time for Coach Talk. And although we know who will be starting under center for the Crimson Tide, there's no doubt about that this season. It's going to be Bryce Young, the Heisman Trophy winner. But that doesn't mean that Coach Saban isn't paying close attention to the quarterback position. The backups, Jalen Milroe and Ty Simpson. Here's what Coach Saban had to say about the improvement that the second-year quarterback Milroe has been making following Saturday's scrimmage.
So, you know, if you look at the statistics, you'll say, well, the quarterback threw an interception or two, but really wasn't his fault. So I think you have to be careful in how you analyze and make sure that you're looking at, you know, what that individual needs to do to continue to get better. And he's got a much better command of the offense. He's much more confident. I think he makes a lot better decisions because of the confidence and the knowledge and experience that he has.
All right, quarterback, much like offensive line, is a developmental position. Now, Alabama's been blessed. They've had some guys that stepped in here and, you know, were ready to play. Bryce barely played as a freshman. Last year he wins the Heisman. Tua didn't play a lot. He stepped in and was dynamic. Jalen Hurts started his first game on campus. But for the most part, Rodney, you want to be able to develop these guys. I think Jalen Milroe has all the physical tools needed to be a good quarterback, and this is going to be a crucial year for him playing behind Bryce Young.
It is. You know, we've talked repeatedly about his great athleticism. This guy's one of the fastest guys on the team, maybe the fastest, or you know, we know he's certainly one of the. So he's a great athlete, made some explosive plays running the football in the scrimmage, had some nice passes. We've heard about the interceptions. But one thing, like Coach Saban said, it's very difficult to evaluate those interceptions, Gary, because you're talking about some young receivers. They're not on the same page. I mean, they're still trying to get this timing together. So precision routes, those types of things makes it really difficult. But I'm with you. I mean, I think Jalen Milroe is a fantastic athlete. He's got a very, very, very strong arm. He's got a lot of tools to be developed.
And the true freshman out of Tennessee, Ty Simpson, great athlete, tremendous prospect. I think for him, this is ideal. You don't want to have to come in like a Jalen Hurts had to and be forced into play. And really, you want an opportunity to sit back and learn, and that's what he's going to be able to do.
Yeah, I think Ty Simpson is a guy that has all the tools. I mean, he's a guy that can move, he's athletic, and he's a great passer. He's got a lot of experience. That's one thing about Milroe, Gary. A lot of people don't know that Milroe didn't come out of a high school that really highlighted the passing offense like so many guys that we see play today. So he's still at kind of the passing game is
learning.
Not exactly. He's still trying to get adjusted to that. And but yeah, Ty Simpson, this guy's got all the tools. He's a coach's son, really smart, really intelligent.
Yep, indeed. All right, still to come on Tyler Insider Television. Alabama basketball added an in-state product through the transfer portal this week. But how much of an impact will he make next season for the Crimson Tide? We'll discuss. And Alabama baseball did something this past weekend they hadn't done in 25 years. You probably can figure it out, but we'll talk more about what they accomplished over in Oxford, Mississippi. And also, shortly, we'll be getting to your phone calls, emails, and tweets. As always, the phone number, 205-348 WVUA. That's 348-9882. Or you can email us at the address on your screen or tweet at us. Use that hashtag TITV. We'll be right back with the only show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide. The one, the only, award-winning Tider Insider TV. We'll be right back. And welcome back to TITV, sponsored by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. Alongside Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com, I'm WVUA 23 Sports Director Gary Harris. Alabama men's basketball roster is going to go through some major changes this offseason. Season ended about a month ago already. The roster looks almost completely different. So Alabama's losing a lot of players. They're going to have to add some back. In addition to a great signing class coming in, they're going to hit the transfer portal. And they hit it big time last week, getting a commitment from Mark Sears, who's a native of Muscle Shoals, spent 1 year at Hargrave Prep before going to play at Ohio University for 2 years, and he lit it up for the Bobcats last year. 19.6 points, 6 rebounds, and 4.1 assists per game. And he announced last week, as I said, that he would be transferring to Alabama for the upcoming season. He signed and officially was announced today as a signee by Alabama. This is a need. I mean, you're talking about Alabama's losing its entire backcourt, Rodney. This is a guy who, much like we talked about with Tyler Steen. I mean, he's done it at the Division I level. He's got experience. He's an in-state kid. He's coming home. I think this is exciting news for Alabama basketball.
He is, and he's a pretty versatile guard. Looks like he could play both guard spots, could shoot the three, Gary. You know, the thing that really stuck out to me, shot over 40% from three-point land. Got a nice left-handed shot.
Yeah, physical, and makes his free throws, which when you're going to get fouled a lot, you are going to get to the free throw line, you need to make them. He cashed in at over 85% from the line. All right, so Alabama picks up a player, and yet another player is into the portal. Not surprising, James Rojas is transferring, the power forward, who was hurt a lot as a player at Alabama, but he's another one of those guys I didn't realize he had any eligibility left. But with the COVID year, he's got another year. Rojas, he was a tough kid. I mean, you know, hurt his knee both seasons here at Alabama, played through the pain, played through, you know, a lot of injuries, and always brought it, you know, and played hard. But it's probably best for him to move on, and we wish him well. But again, Rodney, this Alabama basketball team is going to look a lot different next year.
It is. What do they have, three going to be back?
Three players, I think, that will be back that played substantially last year. Gurley, Bediako, and Miles. Namari Burnett from the Texas State transfer tore up his knee and didn't play last year. We still think J.D. Davidson is not going to be back, and we know the rest of these guys aren't going to be back. So great signing class. Mark Sears coming in. Watch the portal. I think Alabama will add one or two more. All right, let's get to baseball. Rod, Alabama baseball was in Oxford this past weekend, taking on the number 7 ranked Ole Miss Rebels, who were just number 1 a couple of weeks ago. Alabama had not swept the Rebels in Oxford since 1997, the year they finished as the national runner-up. Alabama did. They changed that, man. 7-4, 12-10 in extra innings, and 7-3. Alabama now has won 7 in a row since they beat Belmont today, and they have won 9 of 10. They're now 7-5 in the SEC, and they're ranked in the top 25. It is awesome that they were able to do this, but Rod, there is no let-up in the SEC, and this Alabama team goes to Tennessee this weekend for a series against the number 1 ranked Vols, a team that's lost one game all year.
One game, yeah. You know, this Alabama team, Gary, though, really catching a lot of momentum right now. People were ready to write them off.
Yeah.
A week or two ago.
I might have been one of those guys.
I think it was Brad Bohannon said on your show, your radio show, that they've
fought.
Been involved in more one-run games than anybody in the
yeah.
country. So.
And they always fought. The one good thing about that team, you know, they lost those two games on Friday, Saturday night at Mississippi State in the most excruciating way. They had big leads in the ninth inning of both those games.
Can you imagine if they'd won both of those?
Yeah, hell yeah. But you know what? They came back that Sunday when it would have been easy just to say, man,
they didn't fold.
And they won big.
Right.
And this is a team that's fighting. Hey, listen, Tennessee is the best team in the country right now. But if Alabama could just get one game up there, when you consider they've only lost, they're 32-1 or whatever they are, that would be a big hit for the Tide. But I guarantee you they're going in there this weekend with the idea of winning the series. All right, still to come on TITV, Alabama softball had a matchup with the 6th-ranked Florida Gators over the weekend. The series actually concluded last night. We will go back and take a look at what went down in Gainesville. And up next, your phone calls, emails, and tweets. Again, the phone number 205-348-9882. TITV at WVUA23.com is the email address. We'd love to hear from you, Tider Insider Nation. We'll be right back right after this. All right, Alabama softball on the road this past weekend in a tough place to play. The swamp of softball down in Gainesville, and the Crimson Tide took care of business. They won the first two games on Saturday afternoon and Sunday afternoon. Saturday 8-3, and then won a 2-1 game in 9 innings on Sunday to win the series. That's the good news. Bad news is last night they got 14 hits, riding 7 runs. If I told you they were going to get 14 hits and 7 runs with Montana Fouts pitching, you'd probably say, well, they won that game too. They didn't. They had a nightmarish bottom of the fourth inning, gave up 6 runs. All Florida got was 2 or 3 hits. There were wild pitches. There was a controversial play at the plate where the Falvey, the runner for Florida, knocked the ball out of Shipman's mitt by thrusting her arm up underneath it. Should have been an illegal play. Alabama didn't challenge it. But Florida wins last night to salvage one game. But still, Alabama softball is in good shape. They're number 1 in the country in the RPI, ahead of Oklahoma. So this Alabama softball team's in good shape. They'll host Mississippi State Thursday, Friday, and Saturday of the weekend. All right, welcome back in. The Crimson Tide 33-6 on the season. Time to take some phone calls and get to some emails. Let's start us off with our pal Sammy up in Walker County, the Tomato Man. How about it, Sammy?
Hey, Gary, Rodney, how y'all guys doing? Wanted to ask a question about some young players, probably more to Rodney's direction there, Gary. Damon Payne on the defensive line, highly recruited, and the namesake, Devontae Smith, defensive back. Comment on those guys. Thanks.
All right, Sammy, thank you. All right, Rodney, a couple young players there, a defensive lineman and a defensive back.
Yep, they were freshmen last year. Devontae played a little bit. Of course, he's playing in the secondary. He's got the versatility to play several different spots. I think eventually he'll find a role back there, Sammy. I don't know maybe if it's going to be this year. It's possible. Because he can play so many different roles. And then Damon Payne was really highly recruited, a 5-star according to some, defensive lineman out of Michigan, obviously very highly recruited. And, I think he obviously got some opportunities in the scrimmage. I haven't heard that much about him in terms of being one of the young guys where he's kind of progressing right now, but he is a guy that I know has all the tools, just a matter of developing. But let's say this about that defensive line, Gary. A lot of young players starting to emerge.
Yeah, a lot of talent, too.
Yes.
That's what you want. Talented, young, big, fast guys on the defensive front. Alabama's got them. All right, Sammy, thanks for the phone call. Let's get to an email. And it's the email question of the day, brought to you by KDM Services. All your heating and air conditioning needs. Remember, KDM Services serving your family like our family. From Lawrence over in Alabaster, do you have an update on the Brockemeyer twins? We get asked about Tommy and James a lot because of the fact that they were so highly recruited and their dad was an All-American offensive tackle at Texas, played in the NFL. Their grandfather was an All-American lineman at Texas and played in the NFL, yet they came to Alabama. Rod, I'll lead into you, but I don't want people to push the panic button here. They're young guys, They're going to be fine. It just takes some time sometimes to develop, particularly on the offensive line.
And by the way, their brother's a starting middle linebacker there at Texas.
That's right, yeah.
So they've got a lot of tradition there at Texas. But, yeah, Tommy Brockemeyer, a guy that was a 5-star player out of the Fort Worth area, highly recruited, left tackle, potentially. Again, he was injured a lot kind of in his high school career. I think he came here trying to recover from some injuries, Gary. I'm not sure he's 100% now, but he is a guy that certainly has the ability to develop over time. And you really would like to see, and this isn't specifically Brockemeyer, but a lot of these guys that come in highly recruited, sometimes it takes more than a year or two. Be patient, develop. And I think he has that potential to do that. James Brockemeyer, his twin brother, an interior player, probably a center, not going through spring practice right now. He's had some injury problems, got a real pit bull type mentality, a guy that probably has to get a little bit bigger, but certainly has some potential long range.
All right, still to come on TITV, Alabama Gymnastics in Fort Worth. We mentioned Fort Worth, Texas, getting ready for the national championships. And more of your phone calls, emails, and tweets. Again, the number 205-348-9882. We got phone lines open right now, so give us a ring. TITV is coming right back. Alabama Gymnastics has won 6 national championships in the history of the program. They're looking for number 7 this week out in Fort Worth, Texas. They left today for the NCAA championships, which begin on Thursday. Alabama will compete in the first session, which begins at noon on Thursday with Oklahoma, Utah, and Minnesota. And Crimson Tide, they're competing hard right now. They're performing their best of the season. Don't count them out. All right, welcome back into the program. We got time for a couple of phone calls. Let's get to BT right here in Tuscaloosa. Hey, Bill, how are you?
I'm good, Gary and Rodney. How about y'all?
Doing well. What you got, BT?
What I want to ask Gary and Rodney is about the transfer rule. Now, if I'm not mistaken, you don't have to wait until your junior or senior year, right?
Right, BT. You can transfer anytime you want. I mean, if you get here and you don't like your first fall practice, we hope players wouldn't do that. But if you don't, you can get in the portal and go somewhere else.
Yeah, you have a one-time opportunity to transfer without penalty, not having to sit out. So that's causing a little bit of chaos.
Yeah, it's getting harder for to get players to hang in here and be developed and wait their turn. All right, let's get to Reg over in Birmingham. Hey, Reg.
This is Reg. Listen, I want to ask you guys, I hear a lot about the talent on the team, but why do we have to go through this thing about the offensive line every year? It seems like we never have a steady offensive line that can produce for us.
All right, Reg, it's a good question. It's a legitimate question. I would tell you this. Alabama's offensive line play has been better than most people in the country. I mean, they just won the Joe Moore Award a couple years ago. It's a tough position to learn. It's a tough position to play. It's a position where you get a lot of injuries. Yes, you need continuity, but Alabama has battled through all this and had winning offensive lines because they have had depth and they've developed players to play more than one position. I understand about continuity, but it's hard to start that season with 5 offensive linemen, play 12 games, and have the same 5. It's just hard to do.
Well, and I'm thinking about the 2020 offensive line. They won the Joe Moore Award.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, 4 of those guys are going to be NFL players, maybe all 5. So kind of hard to argue.
Yeah, but they'll get it right. Hang in there, Reg. All right, we'll be right back to wrap up the show after this. Time flies when you're having fun. That's going to do it for Tyler Insider TV, presented by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. Remember, if you missed any of tonight's show or you just want to catch the replay, you can do so tonight at 10:30 following the news at 10 on, or find it anytime at WVOA23.com. We're going to leave you today with highlights from today's Alabama baseball game as the Tide beat Belmont over at the Joe 3-1. Bama's now won 7 straight. For Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Thanks for watching TITV. Have a great night, everybody, and we'll talk to you again next week.